There is a silence in life that many people are terrified to face, a stillness that echoes in the moments when we look around and realize that sometimes no one will be there to hold our hand, to guide our path, or to applaud our progress. And yet, it is within that very silence that the seed of true strength begins to take root. From a young age, I began to understand that dependence on others can become an invisible chain. Many people chase approval, affection, and constant company, believing that without them, they could never move forward. But life, in its relentless wisdom, teaches us a different truth. Growth is not measured by how many walk beside us. It is measured by our ability to walk alone, to stand on our own 2 feet, and to face the world using the resources that already exist within us. The solitude that so many try to avoid is not a punishment. It is a silent teacher, patient and profound. It challenges us to look inward, to confront ourselves without distraction, and to awaken hidden abilities that only emerge when the applause fades and the crowd disappears. In that quiet, we discover our discipline, our determination, and a clarity that cannot exist within the noise of the world. Every moment of isolation, every instance when we believe we are alone, is actually an invitation, a sacred opportunity to meet ourselves more deeply, to build a character that can withstand any storm. Life calls us on a journey, not outward toward recognition or belonging, but inward, toward the vast and unexplored landscape of our own being. This is a path that demands courage. Every step forward requires choice. Every decision depends solely on us. And as we move through it, we discover something extraordinary, that the strength we were seeking outside has always been inside, waiting quietly to be seen, nurtured, and trusted. Once we understand that life will not always surround us with support or companionship, we come face to face with a pure and liberating truth. Solitude is inevitable, but it is not our enemy. It is the wisest teacher we will ever encounter. It is in solitude that we rediscover focus, freed from the noise of distraction and the burden of external expectations. We begin to direct our attention toward what truly matters, our own growth. In the stillness, when the voices of others fade away, discipline awakens. True discipline does not depend on reward, on praise, or on the approval of others. It arises from a deep commitment to ourselves. We learn to rise each day, to make difficult choices, to act consistently, even when the world appears indifferent to our efforts. Solitude teaches us that inner strength does not come from the crowd. It grows from the quiet consistency with which we confront our own challenges. It is solitude that builds resilience, that sacred ability to recover when life knocks us down. When we are alone, there are no hands to lift us and no comforting words to soothe us. We must learn to stand with our own roots, to draw power from the soil of our own being. Every obstacle, every fall, becomes a chance to know ourselves more deeply, to sharpen our will, and to discover that even in isolation, there is an infinite source of power within. Solitude also gives birth to introspection. It is there, in the stillness of the mind and the silence of the heart, that we hear our most authentic voice, no longer distorted by external influence. In that inner quiet, we can finally distinguish what we truly desire from what we were conditioned to desire. This clarity grants us the ability to choose consciously, to shape our lives with intention, and to walk the path of transformation with unwavering steps. When we learn to embrace solitude, we stop fearing it. We begin to understand that it is not a curse, it is a hidden gift, a sacred space where true strength and wisdom take form. Every moment spent alone prepares us for life's inevitable trials. It teaches us to rely on ourselves and reminds us that even when no one walks beside us, we can always move forward, always grow, and always find within our own soul the courage to continue. And when we finally grasp the power that solitude holds, we are confronted with a truth that few are ready to accept. No one is coming to save us permanently. This revelation may seem harsh, perhaps even unfair, but it is profoundly freeing. To realize that life does not owe us its support allows us to release the illusion of dependence and to look inward, to the well of strength that has always been ours. Independence is not born in comfort, nor in the abundance of company. It emerges when we accept that we must rely on ourselves, even in the face of the most difficult circumstances. Every time we stop complaining about the absence of help, we open an inner space where creativity, determination, and clarity can flourish. Complaining only reinforces paralysis. But the moment we stop waiting for others to act, we begin to move, with purpose, with intention, with freedom. To embrace independence means to take full responsibility for our life, our choices, and our emotions. It is not arrogance, it is maturity. It is not about hardening the heart. It is about trusting our own capacity to endure. Every obstacle becomes a mirror, reflecting our strength and our ability to transform our reality. Life is not kind to those who depend on approval. It is generous to those who can sustain themselves, even in moments of deep uncertainty. When we walk alone, we discover that true freedom is born from determination. Independence is not the absence of people, it is the conscious presence of our own will. Every action taken without waiting for permission strengthens us. Every decision made from the center of our being brings us closer to personal fulfillment. It is a silent process, an inner evolution, where life teaches us to depend solely on our conviction and our commitment to ourselves. And it is in this acceptance of independence that one of existence's deepest paradoxes is revealed. When we stop expecting others to carry us, we finally become strong enough to walk. Every step we take on our own, every challenge faced with inner resolve, brings us closer to the essence of who we are and to the life we are meant to create. It is a hard truth, but a liberating one. Transformation and growth do not depend on others. They depend entirely on our willingness to move forward, even when we are alone. When we finally accept that life does not owe us guidance or protection, we awaken to the necessity of cultivating our own discipline. That discipline is not built under the watchful eyes of others, nor is it sustained by rewards or recognition. It is born in quiet persistence, in the steadiness we maintain, when no one is watching, when no one expects results. It is a silent promise to ourselves, an inner contract that allows us to grow even when there is no applause and no external validation. Internal discipline is the backbone of character. It does not arise from pressure, but from the recognition of personal responsibility. Each day that we choose to act, despite exhaustion, fear, or doubt, we strengthen an invisible muscle, the will. It is within the solitude of routine, in the quiet repetition of effort, that we develop the power to overcome and to stand firm against the trials of life. Many confuse discipline with rigidity, but true discipline is not confinement. It is freedom. It frees us from dependence. It grants us clarity and purpose. It teaches us that we are capable of sustaining ourselves in any circumstance. Discipline is slow and often unseen, but it reveals itself in the moments when we continue, when there is no praise, no recognition, and when the world remains silent toward our work. In solitude, we discover that discipline is not punishment, it is a gift. Every consistent action, every deliberate choice brings us closer to our most complete, powerful, and authentic self. Discipline silently transforms us, shaping our character and revealing that real strength is not found in approval, but in our ability to stand, to act, and to persist with quiet determination. And it is here, in the building of this inner discipline, that we finally understand the deeper truth. Life gives us everything we need to grow, but it demands the courage to stand alone, to act with faith in ourselves, and to walk forward, no matter who stands beside us. Every step we take without support, every habit we nurture in silence, prepares us to face life's greatest challenges and to discover that our strength knows no limits, as long as we choose to trust our own capacity to move forward. Life does not always grant us easy paths. Obstacles are inevitable, and they often appear at the very moments when we feel the most alone, the most exposed, and the most vulnerable. Yet it is precisely in those trials where the true strength of our spirit is revealed. Resilience, the ability to rise again and again, is not learned in comfort or in the constant presence of support. It is forged in the crucible of adversity, in the quiet acceptance that even if no one stands beside us, we must continue. Resilience is not luck, nor does it depend on the help of others. It is the pure manifestation of our inner determination, the decision to confront hardship with awareness and purpose. Every challenge, every fall, offers us a new opportunity to know ourselves more deeply, to recognize our limits, to understand our strengths, and to uncover inner resources we never knew we possessed. This process is silent, invisible to others, yet deeply transformative to those who live it. Along this path, the discipline we cultivate in solitude becomes our most loyal ally. Each habit strengthened, every commitment made without expecting external reward becomes an invisible foundation that supports us, allowing us to endure, to progress, and to rebuild ourselves. True resilience is not about avoiding the fall. It is about learning how to rise again and again, and to keep walking with firm steps even when the world seems indifferent to our efforts. It is vital to understand that resilience carries within it a deep wisdom. It is not merely endurance, it is learning from every experience, integrating each difficulty as a lesson that guides us toward greater clarity and discernment. Every obstacle becomes a silent teacher, reminding us that we are capable of far more than we imagine, and that real strength is measured by our to transform adversity into personal growth. So, when you face a challenge that feels insurmountable, remember this: resilience is not born from companionship or external approval. It arises from the inner conviction that you can hold yourself up, even in the absence of others. Every step you take, every effort you make without recognition, strengthens your spirit and prepares you to face future obstacles with serenity and determination, qualities no one can take away from you. In solitude and independence, we come to understand that resilience is not merely a tool for survival, but a doorway to transformation. It allows us to turn moments of hardship into steps towards self-realization. And it teaches us that even when we are alone, we can always find the strength to rise, to move forward, and to create the life we truly desire. Real transformation does not occur among crowds or under the constant gaze of others. It unfolds in silence, in the intimacy of our own existence when we confront ourselves without distractions or expectations. Every moment spent in solitude is an opportunity to look inward with honesty, to acknowledge both our shadows and our light, and to begin shaping the person we are meant to become. In stillness, the mind clears from confusion and societal noise, and a new clarity emerges, allowing us to see what truly matters. There, we uncover our true priorities, our deepest desires, and the decisions we must make to move forward. This quiet introspection offers a safe space to face the fears we usually avoid, to question the patterns that limit us, and to recognize strengths that had long remained hidden. Personal transformation born in silence is a gradual and profound process. It is not about superficial change or quick solutions. It is an inner evolution that manifests in every thought, every action, and every decision we make. It is the building of a strong character capable of facing life with calmness and resolve, even when no one is watching or validating our efforts. Every moment of introspection brings us closer to a more authentic and complete version of ourselves. Silence allows us to hear our inner voice more clearly, a voice often drowned out by others' opinions and external demands. Within that voice lies the wisdom that tells us which path to follow, which habits to cultivate, and which attitudes to release. Learning to trust that inner guidance is learning to walk with confidence, even in uncertainty, to make decisions that truly reflect who we are. Through this process of transformation, we also discover that solitude is not emptiness. It is a sacred and creative space. It grants us the freedom to explore, to make mistakes, and to learn without the pressure of pleasing others. Every challenge faced in silence, every victory achieved without witnesses, strengthens our spirit and proves that we are capable of far more than we ever imagined. Solitude thus becomes fertile ground, where resilience, discipline, and self-determination flourish, preparing the way for a life of authenticity and fulfillment. When we embrace silence and introspection, we begin to understand that personal transformation is an intimate and powerful journey. Each moment alone brings us closer to our essence, teaching us to trust our inner strength and reminding us that even if no one walks beside us, we can still move forward, evolve, and uncover the completeness that already resides within. Inner determination is the quiet force that sustains us when the outer world seems indifferent. It does not depend on applause, recognition, or company. It depends solely on our ability to commit to ourselves, to hold our decisions, and act with conviction even when no eyes are watching and no words of encouragement are heard. This determination is the spark that lights our path even in the deepest solitude. Every action taken by our own will, without expectation of support, is an act of empowerment. Every challenge faced with inner courage strengthens our character and reminds us that true power lies not in external resources, but in the clarity of our intention and the firmness of our will. Inner determination teaches us not to yield to the inertia of waiting, not to fall into the temptation of complaint, and to transform every obstacle into a step toward growth. This inner strength is developed through daily practice. Every conscious choice, every habit cultivated in silence, every sustained effort without immediate reward becomes a brick in the foundation of our determination. It is a process that requires patience, constancy, and self-observation. Life continuously tests us, and it is through resilience, discipline, and introspection that we remain firm in the face of uncertainty and adversity. Moreover, Inner determination grants us freedom. It liberates our mind from emotional dependence on others, allows us to act from authenticity, and shields us from the paralysis caused by external opinions. When we learn to trust our own capacity to decide and act, we discover a power that no external obstacle can destroy. The certainty that we can move forward, that we can transform our lives, and that every step taken with intention brings us closer to our deepest fulfillment. The power of inner determination not only allows us to overcome difficulty, but also reveals our ability to create a meaningful and abundant life. It teaches us that even in the absence of company, even when the road is lonely, we can remain strong, focused, and resilient. Every act of self-determination reinforces our identity and reminds us that true independence and authentic strength arise from our own will, from our to sustain ourselves and to act without relying on anyone else. By understanding and cultivating this power, we come closer to an essential truth. Life does not wait for those who hesitate, nor does it stop for those who depend on others. It moves forward for those who choose to walk with conviction, even alone. And in that conscious decision, we find not only the strength to survive, but also the wisdom to grow, to transform, and to become the most complete and genuine version of ourselves. In the end, we realize that solitude is neither emptiness nor punishment. It is a mirror reflecting our strength, our authenticity, and our potential. Walking alone, we discover that true freedom does not depend on others, but on our ability to stand on our own, to trust our inner strength, and to move forward with conviction even amid uncertainty. To embrace solitude is to embrace life in its purest form. It allows us to look inward, to acknowledge both our shadows and our virtues, and to understand that every challenge, every fall, and every moment of uncertainty is an opportunity to grow and transform. Solitude teaches us that we do not need external approval to live fully, that every intentional step, even in silence, brings us closer to our deepest realization. Remember that life does not wait for those who rely on the company of others. Life moves forward relentlessly, and if you choose to pause, waiting for someone to join you, it will continue without hesitation. Keep walking, even if no one walks beside you. Keep acting, even if no one sees or praises your effort. Keep learning, even if there's no one there to guide you. Because every brave decision you take in silence, every obstacle you face and overcome with your inner determination, is shaping the person you are becoming and building the life you truly deserve. Today, I invite you to look within yourself and recognize the strength that has always been there, quiet, patient, and waiting for you to awaken it. Walk with determination, even when the path feels endless. Act with discipline, even when motivation fades. Nurture your resilience, even when everything seems to test it. And allow solitude not to be your enemy, but your greatest teacher. Because it is in the silence of being alone that you hear the clearest voice, the voice of your soul, the one that reminds you who you are and what you came here to do. Let solitude teach you the value of your own company. Let it reveal to you that your peace does not depend on the presence of others, but on the harmony within your own being. When you stop running from being alone, you start discovering the immensity that exists inside you. The more you embrace that inner world, the less approval you'll need from the outer one. That's where real freedom begins, when you no longer seek validation, because you have already validated yourself. Every step you take alone strengthens your character. Every silent victory shapes the foundation of your confidence. And every time you choose to move forward, despite the absence of applause, you become unshakable. You are not behind, you are simply walking a different path, a path that demands courage, presence, and faith in yourself. True transformation begins the moment you stop depending on others for your strength and begin trusting your own power. You may walk alone, yes, but that solitude is sacred. It is the space where your purpose grows roots, where your soul refines its direction, and where your dreams take shape. So walk alone if you must, but walk. Do not wait for anyone to save you, to recognize you, or to tell you that you are ready. You already are. If these words resonate with you, take them as a reminder that your power was never lost. It was only waiting to be remembered. Share this message with those who need to hear it. Speak your truth, act on your vision, and never underestimate the quiet strength that has carried you this far. Because wisdom expands when it's shared, and your inner light deserves to be seen. Even if no one walks beside you, even if no one claps for your progress, keep moving. The universe always walks with those who dare to move forward. And when you finally look back, you'll realize that every lonely step was guiding you not away from others, but closer to your true self. Why is it so hard to forget someone who has hurt us? Is it the heart, the mind, or something even deeper that keeps us tied to the past? Perhaps you've tried to move on, filling the emptiness with new experiences, convincing yourself that it no longer matters, and yet somehow that memory lingers, like a persistent shadow that refuses to fade. Have you ever wondered why this happens? Today, we are going to explore an answer that goes beyond the superficial, diving deep into the hidden corners of our mind and soul. To truly understand why certain people and experiences remain etched into us, despite our strongest efforts to let them go, we must look beyond what is visible. One of the greatest minds in psychology, Carl Jung, dedicated his life to deciphering the mysteries of the unconscious. His work left us with profound insights into why we cling to certain relationships and why emotional wounds can feel impossible to heal. This video is not just for those who seek to forget, but for those who wish to heal, to better understand themselves, and to reclaim control over their emotions. Imagine this. You're lying in bed, the lights are off, and silence surrounds you. The world outside is quiet, yet your mind refuses to rest. The memories of that relationship, of the laughter, the pain, the words left unsaid, come rushing back as if everything had just happened yesterday. Perhaps you find yourself wondering, why couldn't things have been different? What could I have done to avoid the pain? Why did I allow someone to have so much power over me? This cycle of thoughts is not a coincidence. It is a reflection of something deeper within you, something unresolved that is asking to be understood. And you are not alone in this. Many people have gone through relationships that left deep emotional scars, and despite what society tells us, that time heals all wounds, the truth is far more complex. Time alone does not heal what we carry inside. A wound left unattended does not simply vanish. It lingers beneath the surface, shaping our emotions and decisions in ways we may not even realize. Jung's teachings remind us of a crucial truth. What we do not process consciously remains in our unconscious. It does not disappear. Instead, it hides in what Jung called the shadow, influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors from beneath the surface. The unconscious mind does not forget. Everything we have not faced, everything we have not fully processed, gets stored in this vast and hidden space within our psyche. And it doesn't just stay there. It finds ways to manifest in our daily lives, often without us realizing it. This is why, even when you consciously want to forget that person, something inside you resists. The emotional connection, the shared experiences, and even the pain itself become echoes that continue to reverberate deep within you. At the core of Jungian psychology is a concept that is key to understanding why we struggle to let go: the shadow self. The shadow is the part of our unconscious that holds all the experiences, emotions, and desires that we have repressed or ignored. It is made up of everything we find too painful, too uncomfortable, or too difficult to face directly. And when we go through a painful relationship, especially one that leaves us feeling abandoned, betrayed, or unworthy, these emotions often get buried in our shadow rather than fully processed. But the shadow does not stay silent. Instead, it influences us in subtle but powerful ways, through recurring memories, intrusive thoughts, and even patterns of behavior that keep us stuck in cycles of pain. This is why some people find themselves drawn to similar toxic relationships over and over again. It is not mere coincidence. It is the unconscious mind recreating past wounds, seeking resolution, pushing us towards situations that mirror what we have not yet healed. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is that hidden part of ourselves that we often choose to ignore or suppress. It encompasses all the aspects of our personality that we deem unacceptable, uncomfortable, or unworthy: our deepest fears, insecurities, unfulfilled desires, and unresolved wounds. These are the fragments of ourselves that we push into the unconscious because they feel too painful or too difficult to confront. However, the shadow does not simply disappear. Instead, it manifests in our interactions with others, particularly in relationships that are intense, emotionally charged, or conflict-ridden. Jung suggested that what we reject in ourselves often gets projected onto those around us. In other words, when we feel deeply hurt by someone, it is not always just about what they did or said. More often than not, the real pain stems from what they revealed about us, about the parts of ourselves we have yet to acknowledge. Imagine, for instance, that the person who hurt you represented something you fear within yourself. Perhaps their actions triggered your deep-seated fear of abandonment, exposing a desperate need for companionship that you have long refused to recognize. Or maybe their rejection did not just wound you in the present moment, but rather reopened an old emotional scar, one that you have carried since childhood, yet never fully healed. The shadow acts like a mirror, reflecting back to us the aspects of our psyche that we have buried in the depths of our subconscious. When someone unknowingly triggers this reflection, the intensity can be overwhelming. It is as if we are being forced to confront a version of ourselves that we would rather not see. This is why letting go of pain becomes such a difficult process. The suffering is not solely tied to the other person. It is intricately linked to what they have unearthed within us. So, I ask you, what do you think that relationship revealed about you? What part of yourself have you yet to accept? Reflecting on these questions is not easy, but it is the first essential step toward true healing. Jung famously stated that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This means that as long as we avoid confronting the emotions, wounds, and projections that emerge from our relationships, we will remain trapped in the same repetitive cycles. But there is hope, because once we bring our shadows into the light, not only can we release the pain, but we can also learn from it. This leads to an even deeper question. Why do we seem to repeat the same stories in our relationships, especially the painful ones? Jung provides us with a fascinating answer. Our psyche is shaped by archetypes, the universal patterns that reside within the collective unconscious. These archetypes function like invisible guides, influencing our emotions, thoughts, and most significantly, the way we navigate our relationships. In harmful or toxic relationships, certain archetypes tend to emerge in predictable ways. One of the most common is the savior, a person who feels an overwhelming need to rescue or fix others. At first glance, this role might seem noble or selfless, but beneath the surface, it often masks a deep insecurity, the need to feel needed in order to validate one's own existence. On the other side of this dynamic, we find the victim, someone who identifies with suffering and helplessness, believing that their well-being is dependent on others. This archetype naturally attracts the savior, leading to a relationship built on mutual dependency. Over time, however, this dynamic becomes unsustainable. Then, lurking in the shadows, there is the villain. This figure arises when unhealed wounds manifest as aggression, control, or manipulation. Often, those who play the role of the villain have been wounded themselves, and they perpetuate cycles of pain as a form of self-protection. These archetypes do not exist in isolation. They interact, fuel each other, and create complex emotional patterns. For example, a person who identifies as the savior may initially feel fulfilled by helping someone they see as the victim. But as time goes on, they may begin to feel drained, unappreciated, or taken advantage of. This resentment can eventually transform them into the villain in the eyes of the victim, leading to a cycle of blame, hurt, and disillusionment. This destructive loop is more common than we realize. But the real question is, why do we fall into these patterns time and time again? Carl Jung explained that unconsciously, we are drawn to people who reflect our deepest wounds or patterns we have inherited from our families. If you experienced rejection during childhood, you might find yourself attracted to emotionally distant individuals. This is not a coincidence. Rather, it is as if your psyche is trying to recreate the scenario in which the original wound occurred, hoping to resolve it. Imagine it like this. A person who grew up feeling that they had to earn their parents' love might seek a romantic partner who is cold or indifferent, believing that if they can finally win their affection, they will heal that old wound. But instead of finding comfort, they fall into an endless cycle of rejection and despair, reinforcing the very pain they wish to escape. The key to breaking these patterns lies in making the unconscious conscious. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means that if we do not bring awareness to the forces shaping our relationships, we will continue to repeat the same painful patterns, believing them to be inevitable, rather than choices we can change. One of the most powerful ways to free ourselves is by identifying the archetypes that influence our relationships. Archetypes are deep, universal patterns of behavior and emotion that operate within our psyche. Are you playing the role of the savior, always trying to fix and rescue others? Or perhaps you see yourself as the victim, constantly feeling powerless in your relationships. Maybe you even identify with the villain, pushing people away before they can hurt you. Take a moment to reflect. What roles have you unconsciously played in your past relationships? What patterns seem to repeat over and over again? Answering these questions is the first step to unraveling the hidden forces shaping your life. By bringing these patterns into the light, you begin the journey of breaking the cycle. Because in the end, understanding your archetypes doesn't just free you from toxic relationships, it allows you to build healthier, more authentic, and deeply fulfilling connections. Forgiveness is not about time. It is about internal transformation. We often believe that simply waiting will make pain fade away. But Jung teaches us that true healing requires us to confront our shadow. The shadow is the hidden part of our psyche that holds the emotions, fears, and wounds we try to avoid. But how do we face it? How do we truly heal from a painful relationship? Here, I will guide you through a step-by-step process to free yourself from the weight of a past relationship and transform pain into a tool for growth. The first step is to recognize the emotions that this person still triggers in you. Take a moment to reflect. When you think about them, what do you feel? Is it anger, sadness, guilt, or perhaps a confusing mix of emotions? Instead of suppressing these feelings, allow yourself to fully acknowledge them. One effective way to do this is by writing in a journal or sitting in a quiet space for deep reflection. Ask yourself, where is this feeling really coming from? What part of my past, my insecurities, or my unmet expectations is being reflected here? For example, if you feel anger, it may not only be directed at the other person, but also at yourself, for allowing certain things to happen. If you feel guilt, it might be rooted in a deep fear of not being good enough. These emotions are not random. They are windows into your shadow. Observing them without judgment is the first step in dissolving their power over you. A powerful exercise is to visualize the person standing in front of you, not as an enemy, but as a mirror. Ask yourself, what is this relationship revealing about me? What do I need to accept or heal within myself to truly let go of this pain? At first, this may feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it is also deeply transformative. Jung believed that every painful experience holds the potential to teach us something essential about ourselves. The relationships that mark us the most, whether through love or suffering, are opportunities to uncover hidden patterns that need to change and wounds that are ready to heal. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Shift your perspective and ask, what can I learn from this? For instance, if a relationship made you feel invisible or unappreciated, perhaps it is a sign that you need to work on your self-worth and establish stronger boundaries. If it made you feel emotionally dependent, it might be an opportunity to develop your autonomy and strengthen your sense of self. Reframing pain as a lesson empowers you. It shifts you from feeling like a victim of your circumstances to becoming the creator of your own healing. In the end, to forget is not to erase, but to reconnect with yourself in a way that makes the past lose its power over you. Carl Jung described this process as individuation, the journey toward emotional awareness and the integration of all aspects of our psyche. It is a path of self-discovery that requires us to embrace both our light and our shadow, acknowledging every hidden corner of our being. By doing so, we cultivate a deeper, more solid connection with ourself, that complete and authentic version of who we truly are beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. Individuation demands commitment and courage. It is not an instant transformation, but rather a gradual unfolding of self-awareness. Each small step matters. You can begin by carving out time for self-reflection, exploring your passions, and nurturing the aspects of your life that you may have neglected. Engage in activities that nourish your soul, whether it's meditation, painting, writing, or simply reconnecting with nature. These practices do more than just provide temporary relief. They initiate a profound healing process. In doing so, you come to a life-changing realization. Peace does not come from external validation or circumstances. It emerges from within. As Jung wisely stated, he who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens. This is your moment of awakening. By turning inward, you do not merely seek answers. You rediscover yourself. You reconnect with an inner strength that has always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. So I ask you, what are you willing to do to embark on this journey toward your true self? Because forgetting is not an end. It is a beginning. It marks the start of a path toward a fuller, more authentic life. One in which you take center stage, not the wounds of the past. To rewrite the past does not mean changing what happened. Instead, it means transforming how we interpret it. The power that a painful experience holds over us is often not in the events themselves, but in the narrative we have built around them. The stories we repeat in our minds, the ones where pain, guilt, or frustration take center stage, can become emotional prisons, trapping us in suffering long after the events have passed. But here's the truth. You are not your past. You are not the sum of your wounds. You have the power to reshape your story, to extract wisdom from your struggles, and to reclaim your personal narrative. The moment you choose to reinterpret your past through a lens of strength rather than victimhood, you take back control. You become the architect of your own transformation. So, what will you choose? Will you continue to be defined by the echoes of yesterday, or will you step into the power of your own healing? Carl Jung invites us to take a different approach, to transform our narrative into a bridge toward growth and self-discovery. Think of your past as if it were a book. For a long time, you have been rereading the same chapter, one marked by wounds, regrets, or reproaches. However, that chapter is not the entirety of your story. It is merely a single part of a book that you are still writing. So, what would happen if you chose to take the pen into your own hands and continue writing from a new perspective? Instead of focusing on what you lost or the pain you endured, you could shift your attention to what you learned, the strength you uncovered within yourself as you overcame that suffering. One of the most transformative exercises for this process is visualization. Close your eyes and picture that person standing in front of you. But this time, do not see them as an enemy, nor even as someone who still causes you pain. Instead, imagine them as a fading image, one whose presence is gradually losing its intensity. Visualize their figure dissolving, like a cloud dispersing into the vast sky. Now, in the empty space that remains, plant a seed. That seed symbolizes your future. It is a reminder that you have the power to grow, to flourish beyond what you have lived through. Watch as that seed takes root and begins to sprout, transforming into a strong, vibrant tree, full of life. Every day, that tree stands as a testament to your ability to move forward, to become wiser and more resilient. Rewriting our personal narrative does not mean diminishing the pain we have endured. Instead, it means redefining its significance. Rather than viewing that chapter as something that defines your entire existence, you can choose to see it as the moment that set your transformation in motion. Perhaps that relationship taught you about your boundaries, about what you truly deserve, or about your remarkable capacity to endure and overcome hardship. When you reframe your past in this way, its weight begins to lessen. That experience no longer remains an open wound, but instead becomes a scar, one that tells a story of resilience. To forget, then, is not to erase what happened, but to release the emotional burden attached to it. It is allowing the past to rest where it belongs, as a chapter in your journey that helped shape who you are today. By letting go, you create space for new beginnings, for healthier relationships, and for a deeper, more authentic connection with yourself. It is not about ignoring your past, but about choosing how you want to remember it. Because in the end, you hold the power to decide what place that experience will have in your life. This is your moment of transformation, your opportunity to write a new chapter, one where pain no longer defines you, but instead serves as the foundation for something much greater. So, I ask you, what story do you want to tell about your life from this moment forward? Because in the end, remembering is not the problem. What truly matters is how you choose to remember, and most importantly, how you decide to move on. Are you ready to close that chapter and begin writing a narrative that is freer, more empowering, and truly your own? Forgetting someone who has hurt us is not merely a matter of time. It is a journey of deep self-understanding and healing. As we have explored, the path to releasing that weight begins the moment we dare to look inward, to confront our shadows, to reinterpret our past, and to construct a narrative that liberates us rather than keeping us trapped. It is not about erasing what we have lived through, but about transforming it, turning it into a pillar of strength that reinforces our identity and propels us forward. Now, I invite you to reflect. What part of your own shadow do you recognize in that relationship that still wounds you? What unprocessed emotions or recurring patterns is it revealing to you? Take a moment to not only recognize what has happened, but also to reflect on what you can learn from it. Every experience, whether painful or uplifting, carries within it a lesson, a hidden message that, if uncovered, has the power to transform your perspective and strengthen your soul. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your story, your experience, could serve as a beacon of hope for someone else who is going through something similar. Never underestimate the impact that your words and reflections can have on others. Sometimes the wisdom gained through hardship is exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own way forward. Remember, we are all walking this path of self-discovery and healing together. It may feel like the pain you carry today is eternal, as if it will never fade, as if the weight of it will always be there, pressing against your chest. But if you dare to look inward, if you take the time to truly explore the depths of your own being, you will find the key to letting go. You will realize that within you lies an infinite power, the power to heal, to rise, and to emerge stronger than before. Every step you take towards self-awareness, every moment of introspection, and every small decision to release what no longer serves you is a step toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. Healing is not about forgetting. It is about transforming. It is about reshaping your pain into wisdom and using it as fuel for your personal evolution. Forgetting is not the end. Rather, it is the beginning of a new path, a journey of transformation that leads to clarity, growth, and an unshakable sense of inner peace. If these words have resonated with you, I encourage you to take action today. Don't let this be just another fleeting moment of reflection. Make it the beginning of something greater. Take a few minutes to write down your thoughts. Visualize the life you want to create, and start laying the foundation for a future filled with endless possibilities. Every great transformation begins with a single step, and that step starts within you. And if this video has brought you any value, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. Together, we can create a space where personal growth, emotional healing, and self-discovery take center stage, a space where we uplift and support one another in our journeys toward wholeness. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of the unconscious, into the profound understanding of what it truly means to let go, to heal, and to reclaim your power. Always remember, every step forward counts, no matter how small. You are never alone on this path. I'll see you in the next video, where we will continue exploring the mysteries of the mind and uncovering the keys to living a more conscious, intentional, and meaningful life. Until then, keep growing, keep discovering, and never stop embracing the extraordinary power that lies within you. We all want to believe that our parents did the best they could. And maybe they did. Maybe they truly gave everything they had, with the tools and understanding available to them at the time. But what happens when the choices they made, the words they said, or the ones they never dared to speak, the gestures they expressed, or their lack of presence altogether, continue to shape and even haunt our adult lives? What happens when we look back and begin to realize that the weight of their influence is still with us, affecting how we love, how we trust, and most of all, how we treat ourselves? There is a kind of silent pain that very few people are willing to acknowledge. It's the pain of having been hurt by those who were supposed to protect us. This pain is hard to admit, let alone confront, because it hides behind layers of excuses and cultural justifications. We hear phrases like, "That's just how things were back then," or "They had a tough life," or "They didn't know any better." And while these statements may carry some truth, they don't erase the emotional wounds left behind. The hurt remains, quietly influencing how we connect with others, how we set boundaries, and how we perceive our own worth. Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in psychology, dedicated a significant part of his work to understanding how our childhood shapes the human psyche. He believed that the experiences we have during our formative years leave a permanent imprint on our unconscious mind. According to Jung, what we do not make conscious will continue to direct our lives from the shadows, and we will call it fate. Many of these unconscious forces, he argued, stem from the relationship we had, or didn't have, with our parents. Maybe you grew up with a father who was emotionally distant, someone who was physically there, but never truly present. And now, as an adult, you find it incredibly difficult to open up emotionally or to believe that people won't abandon you. Or perhaps your mother was overly critical, and now you live with an inner voice that constantly whispers, "You're not enough." Maybe you learned at a very young age to be a people pleaser, to suppress your own emotions, your desires, your needs, because every time you dared to express them, you were met with disapproval, silence, or even punishment. These wounds don't disappear simply because we age. They don't vanish just because we've learned to function in the adult world. They remain buried deep within us, hidden in the shadow parts of our psyche, quietly influencing our emotions, our choices, our relationships. That's why, no matter how much we try to move forward, we often find ourselves trapped in repetitive cycles, living out the same pain in different scenarios over and over again. It can feel like life is pushing us into an endless loop of emotional déjà vu. But here's something crucial to understand. Healing doesn't begin by pointing fingers or assigning blame. Healing begins with awareness. We cannot change the past, but we can change how we relate to it. Forgiving our parents does not mean excusing their behavior or diminishing the pain we endured. It means releasing the burden we continue to carry. It means breaking the cycle so that it doesn't continue with us, so we don't unconsciously pass it down to our partners, to our children, or even to ourselves. So, how do we begin this process? How do we truly forgive and heal? First, we must recognize the root of the pain. We must come to terms with the fact that our childhood experiences have deeply shaped our adult identity. Only when we fully acknowledge how those early experiences molded us can we begin to untangle the emotional patterns that are no longer serving us. Our childhood doesn't just disappear because we grow up. It remains alive within us, echoing in our thoughts, reflected in our relationships, hidden in our fears, and repeated in our behavior. It is in childhood where the first seeds of our beliefs were planted. Beliefs about love, trust, safety, and our own self-worth. If those seeds were planted in soil, filled with neglect, fear, criticism, or abandonment, then their roots still run deep into our adult lives, even if we don't see them clearly. Jung explained that the unresolved issues of our childhood continue to manifest unconsciously throughout our adult lives. This means that the emotional atmosphere we grew up in, the praise we did or didn't receive, the love we had to earn or were denied, the boundaries that were either too rigid or non-existent, becomes the blueprint for how we experience life as adults. We may not remember every moment of our early years, but our current emotions, reactions, and coping mechanisms are living reflections of what we absorbed back then. Think about this. A child who felt that they had to earn their parents' love by getting perfect grades, being obedient, never expressing anger or sadness, will likely grow up into an adult who constantly seeks validation. Someone who fears rejection, who tries too hard to be liked, who believes deep down that their value lies in what they do, not who they are. Not because they consciously chose this way of being, but because their unconscious mind learned that this is how love works. Or consider a child who grew up in a home filled with judgment and criticism, where mistakes were met with shame instead of understanding. That child might become an adult who is terrified of failure, who sets impossibly high standards for themselves, who hears a relentless inner critic saying, "You're not good enough," every time they try something new. What began as a childhood defense mechanism becomes a life pattern, not because we want to suffer, but because the unconscious always seeks what's familiar, even if that familiarity brings pain. This is not about blaming our parents for every hardship we face. They too were shaped by their own stories, their own wounds, their own limited understanding of love. But it is about facing the truth. Our early experiences have impacted us more than we often realize, and until we bring that truth into the light, we will continue to relive the same emotional patterns again and again. So how do we recognize whether these childhood wounds are still alive within us? This is where the true journey inward begins, because these wounds, though invisible, are not silent. They speak through our behaviors, our relationships, our fears, and our anxieties. They show up in our struggles to trust, to express ourselves, to feel worthy. They appear in our perfectionism, our fear of rejection, our tendency to sabotage happiness the moment it feels real. Time alone doesn't heal these wounds. Denying them doesn't make them go away. Only by looking inward, with honesty and compassion, can we begin to understand where our pain comes from and how to begin healing it. This path isn't easy. It requires us to revisit the past, to feel things we've spent years avoiding, to unlearn what was never true. But in doing so, we begin to reclaim our power. We stop being controlled by old programs and begin to write a new story, one that is conscious, free, and rooted in self-awareness. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious does not remain in the darkness forever. Sooner or later, it seeks to express itself, and if we don't face it consciously, it will find its way to the surface, through our emotions, our life patterns, and even in our dreams. The unconscious is not silent. It waits for the moment to be seen, to be heard, and if we keep ignoring it, it will speak louder each time, through confusion, emotional chaos, and repeated suffering. One of the first signs of an unresolved wound is the presence of triggering emotions. Think about it. Have you ever found yourself reacting strongly, maybe even explosively, to something that, on the surface, seemed minor or insignificant? Chances are, you weren't just reacting to what was happening in the present. You were responding to something much older, something hidden deep within you. For instance, if someone offers you a simple critique and you immediately feel anger, sadness, or a desperate urge to defend yourself, it may not be about what they said at all. It may be because during your childhood, you were taught, either through words or actions, that love and acceptance were conditional, that your worth depended on your performance. So now, every time you face criticism, your unconscious mind perceives it as a threat to your self-worth. It triggers the same insecurity you felt when you were a child, vulnerable and desperate to be seen as enough. Another powerful sign of unhealed wounds is the repetition of life patterns. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means that if we do not heal what hurt us, we will continue to live it over and over again. It will return in different forms, different people, different places, but the pain will be the same. People who grew up with a deep fear of abandonment, for example, often find themselves in relationships where they constantly feel the need to prove they are lovable. They may overextend themselves, tolerate emotional neglect, or fall in love with people who are distant and unavailable, recreating, without realizing it, the emotional vacuum of their childhood. Others may find themselves sabotaging their own success because deep down, they believe they don't deserve happiness, that joy and fulfillment are not meant for them. But there is an even deeper way that our unconscious communicates with us, through dreams. Jung believed dreams are symbolic messages from the unconscious. They are like letters from our inner world, revealing what our conscious mind refuses to see. A dream where you're being chased, for example, may symbolize a repressed emotion or unresolved fear that you're trying to avoid. Dreaming of a collapsing or abandoned house might represent a part of your psyche that feels neglected or broken, an inner structure that is falling apart and needs rebuilding. Even the appearance of authority figures in dreams can signal unresolved emotions related to your relationship with your parents. If you're someone who constantly seeks the approval of others, it could mean that, as a child, you never felt truly accepted by your parents. If you feel a compulsive need to control every aspect of your life, perhaps you grew up in an environment filled with chaos, and your nervous system learned to equate safety with control. Everything we do in the present has roots in our past. Every reaction, every fear, every compulsive behavior is tied to a moment, often long forgotten, that shaped how we see the world. But recognizing the wound is only the beginning. Healing is far more complex. There is something that makes this process even more difficult: the shadow. The shadow is the hidden side of our psyche, the part of ourselves we deny, reject, or simply don't want to see. Yet, it still affects us, silently but powerfully. When we think of our parents, we often fall into extremes. We either idealize them, convincing ourselves that they did the best they could, or we demonize them, blaming them entirely for our suffering. But the truth lies somewhere in between. Our parents were human beings, flawed, wounded, and shaped by their own unresolved pain. They too had shadows. They too carried fears that governed their behavior. And without knowing it, many of those shadows were passed down to us, not genetically, but emotionally and behaviorally. We inherit not only eye color or personality traits, but emotional patterns. We inherit silence, shame, emotional coldness, anxiety, overprotection, and the inability to express love freely. The things they could not heal often become the wounds we are left to confront. And unless we choose to face them, to look into the shadow and bring light to what has been hidden, we will continue to repeat the cycle. We will keep wondering why life feels heavy, why our relationships hurt, and why peace seems so distant. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the hidden side of our psyche, those parts of ourselves that we have repressed because we've learned to see them as unacceptable, shameful, or too painful to acknowledge. These are fragments of our personality that we've buried deep in the unconscious, often because, at some point in our lives, someone, perhaps a parent, a teacher, or society itself, told us that these traits were wrong or undesirable. But what we suppress does not vanish. It lingers in the shadows, operating silently, subtly shaping our choices, our relationships, and even our very identity. This same dynamic often manifests in how we perceive our parents. Many of us grow up denying their flaws, not because we don't see them, but because recognizing them hurts. Admitting that our parents made mistakes would mean accepting that the very people who were supposed to love and protect us may have also hurt or failed us. And that's an excruciating truth to face. In some cases, we swing to the opposite extreme, demonizing our parents, turning them into villains in our internal narrative, and clinging to resentment as a form of emotional armor. But here's the paradox. Even when we resent them, we remain emotionally tied to them through that very resentment. We're still bound to them, still haunted by their influence, still reacting to wounds left unhealed. Yet the family shadow goes beyond how we see our parents. It's also embedded in the patterns and behaviors we've unconsciously inherited. Perhaps we were raised by an emotionally distant father, and we've spent our lives rejecting that coldness, vowing to be different. But if we're brutally honest, how often do we withhold our emotions? How many times have we created distance in our relationships without realizing it? The truth is, what we most resent in our parents often mirrors what we've internalized in ourselves. It's easier to see their mistakes than to confront the ways we've replicated them. It's simpler to say, "My mother didn't know how to love," than to ask ourselves, in what ways do I also struggle to express love? It's easier to blame our father for being overly critical than to acknowledge how harsh we've become with ourselves or with others. The shadow isn't just what we hate about our parents. It's also what we unknowingly carry forward, what we repeat, what we become. And until we bring these unconscious truths into the light, we remain trapped in cycles of repetition, living out the same pain, making the same choices, becoming the very people we swore we'd never be. When we're not aware of our shadow, we project it onto others. This is where the psychological mechanism of projection comes into play. One of the most subtle yet powerful ways the unconscious forces us to face what we don't want to see. Carl Jung explained that we project onto others the parts of ourselves we cannot accept. In other words, what we refuse to acknowledge within, we begin to see outside of us, in the behaviors of others, in our partners, our friends, our children. Projection is the unconscious mind's defense. It shields us from the pain of self-confrontation by making the problem appear external. But this also keeps us stuck. When we don't make our wounds conscious, we are doomed to repeat them, often without even realizing it. Consider this: if we were raised by excessively demanding parents, we might grow into adults who push ourselves relentlessly, never feeling good enough, never allowing ourselves rest. Or we might become critical of others, echoing the harsh voices from our past. If we grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, where one day we felt embraced and the next ignored, we may now find ourselves attracted to chaotic relationships, drawn to emotional highs and lows that feel disturbingly familiar. We may complain about feeling unloved or abandoned, unaware that we are choosing relationships that replicate the emotional instability we once knew. This is no coincidence. The unconscious seeks what is familiar, even if it hurts. There is a powerful exercise worth trying. Think about the traits in your parents that bothered you the most. Were they authoritarian, emotionally unavailable, cold, or dismissive? Now ask yourself with raw honesty, in what ways have I adopted those same behaviors? Perhaps not in obvious ways, but in small habits, in how you speak to yourself, in how you treat others. What we reject in our parents often becomes what we unknowingly carry within. And what's most ironic is that many of us are unconsciously drawn to people who resemble our parents, hoping deep down to rewrite the story, to heal the original wound by reliving it in a different way. But healing doesn't come from repeating the pattern. It comes from breaking it. Recognizing these patterns is only the first step. True healing requires something deeper, a conscious journey toward what Jung called individuation. This is the process through which we integrate all parts of our psyche and become whole. It's how we move beyond the injuries and limitations of our past and step into the person we were always meant to be. Healing does not mean forgetting what happened. It doesn't mean justifying the pain or pretending everything was okay. Healing means we no longer allow our history to control us. It means reclaiming our power, our agency, our identity. Individuation, according to Jung, is about becoming your most authentic self. It's not about being perfect. It's about being whole. But this journey is not automatic. It requires deep, conscious work. We must be willing to face what we've spent years avoiding. We must look within and confront the inner child still carrying wounds that were never validated, never soothed. There are 4 essential steps on this path. Acknowledge the wound without victimhood. We cannot heal what we don't recognize. This means admitting that our childhood left marks, some subtle, some deep. It's not about blaming our parents forever or staying trapped in anger. It's about giving our pain a name. But the wound should not define us. We are not just the wounded child. We are much more than our suffering. Embrace the shadow without fear. What we reject in ourselves often ends up controlling us. Jung believed that unless we confront our shadow, we will keep projecting it onto the world. That means accepting that, in many ways, we have repeated what once hurt us. Maybe we vowed not to become like our parents, but we've found ourselves in eerily similar patterns. The key is not self-punishment, it's awareness and the conscious choice to change course, free ourselves from projection, and see our parents with clarity. Real healing happens when we stop viewing our parents through the eyes of the wounded child. Neither idealize them nor vilify them. Understand them. They too were shaped by their own pain and limitations. This doesn't excuse their actions, but it does humanize them. True freedom begins when we stop expecting them to be different and instead give ourselves the love and validation we once sought from them. Consciously decide who we want to be. This is the most crucial step. We cannot change our childhood, but we can choose how we respond to it. Will we continue living out unconscious patterns, or will we reclaim authorship over our story? Individuation is about becoming the person we choose to be, not the person our wounds created. Many people have turned their pain into power. Those who suffered abandonment have learned to support themselves with love. Those who feared rejection discovered that their worth is not up for negotiation. Those who felt they were never enough have realized that the only approval they need is their own. And yet, there remains one final profound step in this process, the most difficult, but also the most transformative: forgiveness. Not as a favor to our parents, not because they deserve it, but as a gift to ourselves. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or minimizing the pain. It is not about saying, "It wasn't that bad." Forgiveness, in its purest form, is a form of personal liberation. It is the moment we stop carrying the weight of the past, the moment we set ourselves free. Carl Jung spoke of the process of integration, a deep inner journey that invites us to see our personal history with unflinching clarity, stripped of both victimhood and denial. It's not about painting ourselves as helpless or pretending nothing happened. Instead, it's about facing the truth as it is. In this process, we stop idealizing our parents as flawless heroes or condemning them as ruthless villains. We begin to see them for what they truly are: human beings, humans with their own wounds, their own shadows, their own emotional limitations. So often, we carry a silent resentment we don't even realize is hurting us. It festers quietly, shaping our thoughts and relationships. We hold on to the idea that our parents should have been different, that they should have known better, should have done more, should have loved more consciously. And while that feeling is deeply valid, born from very real emotional needs, the truth remains: the past cannot be rewritten. Waiting for emotional justice, waiting for the apology that may never come, only extends our suffering and delays our healing. True forgiveness is not about convincing ourselves that the pain inflicted upon us was somehow okay. It's not about erasing what happened. Forgiveness begins when we decide we no longer want that pain to shape our lives. It happens when we refuse to let the past keep dictating our present. A person with an emotionally absent father, for example, may spend a lifetime consumed by resentment, feeling abandoned, and constantly asking why they were never loved the way they needed. But that person also has the power to pause, to reflect, and to ask themselves a different question. Who was my father before he became my father? What story shaped him? What emotional wounds did he carry long before I ever entered the picture? Jung reminded us of a powerful truth: what we fail to integrate will continue to repeat itself. If we remain shackled to anger and blame, it is likely that the same unresolved pain will continue showing up in our relationships and patterns. If we are constantly waiting for our parents to acknowledge the damage they caused, we are still giving them control over our emotions and our healing. Taking back that power means choosing to look inward instead. There is a powerful practice that can help us with this process. It begins with writing a letter, raw, honest, uncensored. Say everything you've ever wanted to say. Speak from your pain, from your anger, from your sadness. Don't hold anything back. Then, take a second sheet of paper and write a response as if you were your parent, not to excuse their actions, but to see their story from a new perspective. Try to understand what they might have felt, what they might have gone through, what emotional burdens they carried. This exercise is not about justifying what they did. It's about releasing the emotional weight we've been holding for so long. It's about realizing that healing is a journey we must choose to walk ourselves. At the end of the day, the responsibility for our healing does not belong to anyone else. It belongs to us. And there is one final lesson that has the power to transform your life forever. How to turn your pain into wisdom. Because true transformation is not just about letting go of the past. It's about using that past to create a more conscious and authentic life. You cannot change what happened, but you can choose what you will do with it. Childhood leaves marks. Some are visible. Others are hidden deep within the unconscious. We spend years trying to make sense of it all, trying to understand why our parents were the way they were, why they hurt us, why they never gave us what we so desperately needed. But there comes a point in every journey when a choice must be made. Will we continue to be prisoners of our story, or will we choose to transform the pain into wisdom? Carl Jung taught us that true growth occurs when we stop running from our shadow and begin to embrace it. The same principle applies to our past. It's not about ignoring what happened. It's not about staying stuck in resentment. It's about looking at our history with new eyes. It's about turning every scar into fuel for transformation. That childhood wound, the one that left you feeling abandoned, unworthy, unseen, can become the very force that helps you grow. If you were never emotionally supported, you can learn to be the one who holds yourself with tenderness. If you were told you were not enough, you can now become the one who affirms your worth without waiting for anyone else's validation. If you grew up in an emotionally cold environment, you have the power to break that cycle and become someone who loves with presence and awareness. Nothing you experienced was in vain. Every moment, every tear, every disappointment carries within it the potential to become a source of strength and understanding. What hurt you does not have to define you, but what you do with that pain, how you choose to carry it forward, that can define everything. And now, the question remains, what will you do with what you've just uncovered? If this message resonated with you, it's not by accident. Something inside you is ready to heal, ready to evolve. Maybe you can't change the past, but you can change your relationship with it. And in that choice, in that shift, lies the real freedom. If this message resonated with you and you believe someone else needs to hear it too, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video, and help us reach more people who are ready to heal, grow, and reclaim their lives. Remember, your past does not define you. Your choices do. You have the power to turn your pain into purpose, your wounds into wisdom, and your story into a source of light for others. Keep going. You're not alone, and your healing journey has already begun.